Hello and thank you for joining us on Access Community Television. I'm Molly Caron.
And I'm Imtiaz Popat. And so what's on the show today, Molly?
We're going to bring you stories of healing journeys, as well as checking in with Hereditary Chief Bill Wilson, who will school us once again on overlapping treaties and self-governance.
And Wendy Pedersen will be talking to the Housing Alliance. And then on Hot Topics, Wendy, Gunargie, and Gary will be talking about upcoming cultural events and what's happening downtown Eastside. But first up, you're talking to the Viet Collective for Community Justice.
That's right. We have three young people. We have Chanel, David, and Vanessa, who have come together to talk about the unnecessary death and shooting by the police of Du No Phoung, who has left us but has brought together a strong community. All that and tips for your appliances from Chris Hilliker on Access Television. On November 22nd, 2014, there was a sudden and unnecessary death of Du Na Phoung, Tony Du, at the intersection of 41st and Knight. And that sudden death has brought together the Vietnamese community. And with me today, I have Chanel Lee, David Lee, and Vanessa Bui, who are all members of the social justice group Viet Collective for Community Justice. And we will begin with asking you, Chanel, about the vigil and how the vigil for Tony Du came about.
So we're a group of friends that are connected through social justice work, and we heard about this death, and it was a timely death along with so much police brutality incidents across the continent, basically. And hearing that this man was Vietnamese was quite outraging for us, and so we decided to come together. We thought that a vigil would be necessary to honor and remember his life, to support his family, and to show solidarity for especially the killing of Black people in the States.
Yeah. And to be clear, he was a 51-year-old man, and he was simply carrying a 2x4, and he was talking to himself, and he was approached by the police. They shot him with beanbag bullets, and then within a minute, fatally shot him. And this is being in the news, and now it's under investigation with the Independent Investigation Office, but it's not out of mind, is it? So when the vigil came about, I understand there was quite a large turnout of people, and how did that feel? David?
Sure. I think the turnout really, I think there was around nearly 100 people who were in attendance, and I think it was a really powerful moment because not only did we see so many Vietnamese community members come together to honor the life of Tony, as well as folks who are also very much so in solidarity with other instances of police brutality occurring in the United States. So it was kind of one of those really amazing moments that we really see community coming together, both within the Vietnamese community and outside of the Vietnamese community. So it was really a powerful moment of community building.
And Vanessa, it was clearly not the only time that mental illness has come in the news. And we were discussing earlier how this is actually a common way that the police have been misunderstanding mental illness. And Paul Boyd was an example on Granville Street a few years ago. And how is it that you see this as how is this issue? Is it just is it a language barrier, or is it also a mental illness misunderstanding? Where does it fit in when you guys talk about this?
There's a lot of layers to it.
Yeah.
Certainly mental health is something that is a common thread among police brutality or police killings.
Yeah.
and yet there's always other layers of, is this person low income? Is this person racialized? Is this person, is there addiction involved? And so in this particular incident, Tony Du is Vietnamese. He is an immigrant. We're not sure, what his language capabilities were, but we do know that he did suffer from schizophrenia, and that was one of the major forces in his actions and why he behaved the way he did. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about being second generation Vietnamese, and your parents have all come through an amazing history and come to Canada, and does that unify you, or is there a tangible isolation that you guys feel still? Can you tell us what that's like? Because of the history of the liberation of Saigon, and yet there's a lot of friction and fragments within Vietnam that are actually kind of here in Vancouver now.
Yeah.
How does that illustrate itself?
Well, I can only speak from my own experience, but so I'm North Vietnamese. My parents are both from Ha Long Bay, and so this perspective of the communist government in Vietnam is a little different, although my parents also left Vietnam during the mass exodus of 1986 because of the communist regime. However, for us, the only moments of tension I notice are just the lack of interaction I personally have with the South Vietnamese community or the Central Vietnamese community, and hearing stereotypes or hearing stories, but not necessarily seeing it, but through actual interaction. I do know that there is a more population of South Vietnamese people here in Vancouver, but also in the States, and that there's still a lot of healing that needs to be done, because there's a lot of pain and trauma that came when people immigrated here, and it's carried on through their children and through our generation. The
residual effects of colonization.
Yes.
And there's so many sides to that story. So I personally am immersed in when I want to go out for food, that's how I meet and mingle with my Vietnamese community, which is near Kingsway and Knight. And I always have thought that food is a great way to open doors for people. And I noticed that there's no community center other than just the businesses that are along Kingsway and in East Van. What if there was a community center for elders and for young people and events? How would that be a meaningful starting point for unifying?
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
That would be a dream to have a gathering place. We kind of have some. It is existing in Vietnamese restaurants, I think. But it'd be amazing because our parents are aging, and I'm worried personally about my parents, how to support them and how to find a community for them when they retire. And it'd be great for not just the Vietnamese community that's living here, but Vietnamese newcomers to come and find a place to belong as well, and to kind of address community issues together. I think is important.
Well, it's ironic that such a tragic event has brought you together, but now there's solidarity, and people can get involved. You guys have a group, the Viet Collective for Community Justice, and you're going to have fundraisers and future events that will bring your community together. So we'll leave people with that contact point. And thank you all for being the young generation that is bridging that gap and telling this story. And thank you for joining us on Access Television.
Thank you.
Thanks, Molly.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Wendy Pedersen. I'm here with Gunargie O'Sullivan and Gary Olver, and we're here about downtown Eastside hot topics and beyond. So So, you two, tell us about this amazing ceremony that happened at the Friendship Center, the Honoring the Women and Rebalancing ceremony.
Oh yeah, it was awesome. Woody Morrison facilitated it. It's been like 75 years since that ceremony has ever been practiced. And what they did was they honored 17 women from the community who were all asked to come up and dance under a paddle.
Yeah, it was
and
great.
they went around the floor and they all got together in a big circle facing inwards, and then the men came and stood behind them with the backs to the women so that they could protect them. And it was amazing ceremony.
Tell us about the Red Jam Slam Festival.
Radio Festival, yes. The Red Jam Slam Radio Festival will be happening on Aboriginal Week from June the 17th, 2015 to June the 21st. We start off at the Musqueam Cultural Center, and then on the 18th at the, the Vancouver Aboriginal Policing, Community Policing. Then on the 19th, we'll be at a local school. The Vancouver School Board is co-facilitating with us. And on the 20th, we go to the Gallery Gachet. And on the 21st, we end up at the Bill Reid Gallery, 839 Hornby Street. That's going to be awesome because that will be the grand finale. We go from 1 o'clock to 5 every day, and it will be aired at 7 different stations.
Cool.
CITR is providing the remote, www.citr.ca, and stations like Co-op Radio, CJSF, CKUW in Winnipeg, CKUT in Montreal, and CKBUX in Lethbridge.
So
will be carrying the feed.
We need to move on to the Douglas Reynolds Gallery. Can you tell us quickly what's happening there?
I guess the Douglas Reynolds Gallery has an annual show every year, and this year it's on the 27th of June, and he features a number of artists up and coming to other recognized artists, and they display some of their latest works.
That's right.
Right on.
Alano Edzer, Bill Reid artists will be there. Well, no, Bill Reid won't be there, but they'll be featuring some of his artwork. Marcus Alford, Philip Gray, Don Yeoman, Moy Sutherland, and Ernest Swanson. And Ben Davidson. Some of Gary's work will also be there.
All right, Gary.
Gary Olver.
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to ask you, talk about galleries. Isn't there something happening with the gallery that you know about?
Yeah, the Grunt Gallery.
Grunt Gallery.
I just went to the exhibition yesterday, opening and panel, and it's called the Eraser Street. It's so cool. It's about it's an exhibit of photos on the theme of dispossession and displacement. So they had photos of Tent City, Oppenheimer Tent City, the old Stanley Park squat that happened in the 1970s. They had photos of beautiful Uglyville, the condominiums they're building around McDonald's near the SkyTrain, the Main Street SkyTrain station. Yeah. And it's about conquest of space in the city of Vancouver, so I recommend people go to see that.
We're all familiar with that.
No kidding. So we should also talk about the downtown Eastside.
That's at the Grunt Gallery?
Yeah, it's at the Grunt Gallery, so we'll put a little web link on the show. So we should talk about the downtown Eastside because we have to wrap up, but there was 2 major fires that happened in the last month. Can you tell us about the 2?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll start off by talking about the one that we are all familiar with and give you a bit of an update. You know that 2 homeless people died in the fire that happened on Raymer Avenue. What we didn't know at the time was that these 2 people were Métis. One was a mother and a son. They had apparently lost their siblings and their children in a fire years back, like 20, 30 years ago on the res. Yeah. Then the mother actually got housing at Native Housing. She refused the housing because she didn't like the policies and the procedures. She wasn't allowed to have any family members stay with her until for 6 months after. So she actually chose homelessness over housing because of the policies and the procedures that are in place.
So quickly, the other fire, because we have to wrap up.
Yeah, it was one down in Pender Street. Was it what was the name of that?
Daisy Gate.
Yeah, it was
restaurant.
The Daisy Gate
Yeah.
Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
And apparently they were doing some roofing, and they came back from lunch, I believe, and the place was engulfed with flames, and the firefighters showed up, and by that time it had already gotten to the woodwork, and
Yeah.
You know, and
And it's another low-income place.
And the
that
landmark kind of
lost.
establishment kind of.
What's
went up
interesting
in
is how
smoke.
fast they move along with to continue the development
Right.
so soon after these
So
fires.
one last little thing I'm going to squeeze in is the police station on Main Street near Hastings and Main. So it's been empty for a while. And speaking of development, so the plan is they want to do this Center for Social Innovation and put like, you know, business incubator there. And so I'm worried about that because, yeah, that's important. You need business incubation. People need jobs. But I'm worried about the impact of the development's going to have on the rents and the displacement next door. Like there could be a massive development across the street because of that. Like,
Sure.
So more on hot topics. We'll keep you posted.
Yeah, the heat is rising.
The heat is rising.
Are you paralyzed with indecision whether to run your washer on hot or cold or somewhere in between? Well, Chris Hilliker has the answer for you with our next appliance break segment right here on Access TV.
Some machines nowadays have automatic temperature control. In the old days, cold was opening the cold tap and letting that cold water run in. Hot was opening the hot tap and letting the hot water run in. Then warm was opening both at the same time. Nowadays, machines have automatic temperature control. This will control the mix of hot and cold to get an exact temperature. Using the auto temp, it may be that when we set it to cold, it'll add a little hot every now and then to make sure that the water's not too cold. Or if we set it to hot, it may add a little cold to make sure that it's not too hot. On this particular model, we have automatic temp control, which they show here in some letters. And then we also have some that don't say automatic temp control. So we could actually use either of these. But we may find that for some items of clothing, we need to know the precise temperature. If you ever find that your washing machine that has an automatic temperature control feature isn't filling with water or not filling correctly, try using the other functions just in case. It may be that it'll work on the non-auto temp control feature, in which case then you know that your auto temp is broken. And meanwhile, you can limp along using the good old method if you find you need to get it fixed at all.
Next up, we're going to get into the details of the Social Housing Alliance. Wendy Pedersen is in conversation with Maria Wallstam and Dave Diewert.
Hi, my name is Wendy Pedersen, and I'm here with Maria Wallstam and Dave Diewert, my friends from the Social Housing Alliance of BC. So tell us about the Social Housing Alliance. What is it?
So the Social Housing Alliance started a few years back in the months building up towards the provincial election, wanting to push social housing as an issue within that election framework. And since then, we've decided that really what we need to do is to build a grassroots movement of people who are impacted by the housing crisis, who are being displaced from their communities by all kinds of forces that are at work, gentrification, renovictions, resource extraction, and that these are happening across the province, that it's not just located in one geographical region, but these are happening everywhere, and we need to connect these struggles. So we've been trying to build towards that.
Maria, can you tell us about your current campaigns? What do you have going on right now?
So right now we're actually organizing in Burnaby, and historically there hasn't been any organizing around housing or gentrification in this area. Like in Vancouver, people have been organizing around housing for decades. But what's happening right there with the SkyTrain going through Metrotown as well as Edmonds and just all the way out to Surrey is that there's a lot of speculation. And around that area we also have a lot of three-story walk-ups with a lot of renters, recent immigrants, low-income renters in general. And so they're being bought up. There's been a dozen sales, I think, just in the last few months, and demolished and then redeveloped for condo developments and high-end rental that low-income people don't afford.
Yeah, I saw those shocking photos of the giant condo towers and the tiny rentals. So those rentals are at risk, basically.
Yeah. And so you walk through these neighborhoods with these kind of three-story walk-ups, and there's big holes in the ground where they've demolished, rental buildings. And so it's just a question of time, I think, really, until all those walk-ups will
So
be
what is the Social Housing Alliance actually doing with people there to stop this and to protect the low-income housing?
So I think initially we were trying to engage with the community there, those who are renting in these 3 or 4 story walk-ups. What are their concerns, anxieties about the looming displacement that the shadows of the towers cast across their lives, and the ways in which it disrupts their lives in the communities and breaks up community. And so we're trying to engage with them in conversations and develop a strategy of demands that then we can push as campaign and develop local capacity to resist displacement. Because in Burnaby right now there are no ways of stopping this. The municipality has given a green light to high density zoning, and it's a free-for-all for developers.
Wow.
And so the gentrification that's happening and the loss of low-income affordable housing is really impacting a community that historically has been a working-class neighborhood.
How many people do you think will be affected there, just around the Metrotown area? Do you have an estimate?
Well, since the new zoning went in about 2011, the increasing loss of rental housing and low-income rental housing has just gone through the roof. And so now hundreds of units are being lost every year.
So how does this, what's happening in Burnaby and what you're doing in Burnaby, how does that link up to other housing justice struggles that Social Housing Alliance is working on, I guess on the Lower Mainland and across BC?
Just to elaborate a little bit there, it's like there's this idea of transit-oriented development, and so we almost think about it as transit-led displacement, because that's really what's happening from Vancouver, all the way to Coquitlam and Surrey. But how it links up, it's what we're seeing is that a lot of people we met in Burnaby, they were initially displaced from the downtown east side. They were displaced there because of gentrification, and so they're pushed to Burnaby. It's a little bit more affordable there still, but the rents are going up, and the average rent right now is about $1,000, so it's not actually much less than Vancouver. And of course, people are being pushed out to Surrey, being pushed out to Abbotsford, and now we have tent cities in both Abbotsford and Maple Ridge. But this is something Dave also can elaborate. So
just recently, you don't think of these sites as places where homelessness is evident or flourishing or deepening. Mostly when you think homelessness or a housing crisis, people associate it with the downtown east side. But just recently, it hit the media a couple of days ago that there's a homeless camp in Maple Ridge. So I traveled out there, and there are 30 to 40 people in this area. They were living in a forested ravine, but that's been a sort of site of a kind of hidden homeless camp for 15 years. Wow. They decided to fence off that area and move people out of the ravine, so they all just camped along the fence. Now they're more visible, and it's become a media sort of hotspot. The mayor has to get involved, and the same old thing happens over and over again of, now what do we do? And let's try to find housing here or there, but we have to push people out. So what they talked about in Abbotsford, for example, is that it's a strategy of displacement, of harassment and displacement of people from one place to another, because they have no real solutions. They're not building real social housing, so they're just trying to render people invisible.
And the Social Housing Alliance was at SFU too, so there's displacement happening there. Just tell us quickly about that, Maria.
And so, I mean, there's just austerity happening across the country, and there's cuts to social housing, so there's no more funding for social housing in the province or across the country. And so in the city of Vancouver, 17,000 housing units are going to lose their funding in the next 10 to 15 years. And this is also happening with the universities. They're losing their funding. They've had massive cuts in the last decade. And so they were recently planning to shut down the only low-income family housing, SFU Burnaby. And that would displace over, 24 families, low-income families and single mothers.
Is that the Louis Riel house?
This is the Louis Riel house. And these tenants fought back, and now they're going to get subsidies from SFU. But there's no more housing being built for low-income families at SFU, so it's going to make it harder for low-income families and single mothers.
And there's a knock-on effect of displacement. So as students no longer have housing on university campuses, they move into the SROs that are being converted for students.
Right.
And so there's a knock-on effect of displacement as they're pushed off the campus and into other sites for finding housing. And then low-income people get displaced.
So as organizers, how are you going to get people involved? Like, how would you like to get people involved now?
Well, I think that there's a importance for grassroots movements. So people who are impacted by these forces of displacement and the housing crisis, to one, break the isolation, the sense that they're powerless, that we just have to give in to this, that we can't even imagine a better world where people have housing that's decent and good. So I think one is to bring people together who share that experience of displacement and strategize on how to resist. I think the Louis Riel experience was a good one for that, because people said, we want to fight back. And so how do we do that together? And the Social Housing Alliance was part of helping to formulate a strategy of resistance that came up with demands and that could stop that.
So quickly tell us about June 3rd.
And so our next general meeting is on June 3rd. We have a monthly general meeting, so that will be at the Burnaby Neighborhood House at 7 or 6:30?
7 o'clock, yeah.
Okay, and we can put a link to the website, but tell us the website address for the Social Housing Alliance.
It's socialhousingbc.
Socialhousingbc.
Something.
Okay. So thank you so much, Maria Wallstam, Dave Diewert, for doing all your amazing work to draw people together across the province to build a really strong, powerful movement for social housing. We definitely need it. So thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Wendy.
Hello, I'm here with LJ Meijer, who is a cinematographer, and he has been documenting the ploy of people searching for homes, especially since the Oppenheimer Tent City, which sprung up in our city in August last year.
Well, actually it was late July, and it went until basically a court injunction shut it down in mid-October, right. October 16th.
And one of the friends you've made is Scott, and you've been following him through all the seasons and as he has been moving around searching for a home. Tell us what makes Scott special.
Well, Scott has a lot of problems, a lot of medical problems. He also has some anger issues that get in his way as well. But I find him a very likable guy, and I'd like to see him get into a place somewhere. And so I've been keeping track of him for the 7 months since the Oppenheimer Tent City was closed down. Okay. And unfortunately, he hasn't been able to find any place. He's been offered a rent supplement, but he's basically been in shelters or on the street. And for people that haven't been in shelters, they can drive you crazy after a bit. And he's gotten to a point now where he basically can't stay in them anymore. Okay. And so he's been basically out in the street.
And what have you witnessed with regard to the services around him and all of the nonprofits that are set up to help people in his situation?
Well, I would like to give an enormous shout out to the people that try to help the homeless in the downtown Eastside. From BC Housing, Carnegie Outreach, also Coastal Health and the various shelters, because they do put themselves on the line every day to help people like Scott. And so I've been amply impressed by what they do. Okay,
and yet he's still in search of a home. What's the ideal situation for Scott?
Well, I'm not sure. He has anger issues, and so in a sense, when he loses his temper, he's his own worst enemy. But on the other hand, that being said, he's come by it honestly. He had a very, very hard childhood, and he's had a lot of things happen to him that have led to this. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he's homeless just makes it much, much worse. In the last 7 months, I've witnessed how he's lost everything multiple times. He lost everything after the Oppenheimer was shut down. He lost everything again after he left the shelter. Mm-hmm. He lost his ID. He's had his phone stolen.
And you've been documenting this.
Yeah.
So LJ, thank you for bringing this story to us, and we're going to see some of the footage that you have compiled. Yeah. LJ Meijer, contributor with Access Television. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So where were you working?
Scott was one of the homeless tenters that the city forced out of Oppenheimer Park last year, but he never got the social housing that the city promised. After being out in the street for a month, he finally got into a shelter, and he thought he was going to get social housing.
And that triage about, what, 3 or 4 months now?
under the impression that I was going to get into this building on West 2nd to find out Thursday that I'm not getting in there because BC Housing says no to social housing, rent supplement only if I go market rental basically.
You've got to find a market rental, then they'll pay you a supplement.
To make up the difference. $375 up to $750.
Still, Scott has not been able to find an apartment.
My nurse told me Friday we cannot do any more for you. Your leg is right back to what it was to when we started, and it was almost healed.
Life in the shelters was taking its toll on Scott, so he decided to camp out for a couple of nights in Crab Park.
Oh, well, how many are you?
So you like it better?
Oh, peace, tranquility.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the police found him at about 3 a.m. The next night, he tried another location. How much sleep did you get last night?
About 3 hours, I guess.
And how much sleep do you get usually in the shelter?
About that, if I'm lucky.
But did you find the sleeping outside more or less restful?
It was more restful. I was more rejuvenated.
Why was that?
The peace and tranquility. Not hearing the fight and the wrangling all night.
Scott slept into the afternoon the next day. Unfortunately, Scott had another stroke when he returned to the shelter, then ended up having to leave because his sleeping bag got stolen.
Just after supper, to find my room was ransacked and my sleeping bag was gone off the bed. I see a coffee cup sitting there, which I know it's not mine, but I know who it belongs to. I went down, I talked to the manager, and I told the manager straight up that I wanted to lay him out, that I found out who was going in my room and stealing my shit. I confronted the fellow that was robbing me, and he said, if you touch me, I'm calling the police. I was advised by the staff that if I touched him, I'd be charged. So I took it upon myself to leave.
In the course of leaving the shelter, Scott lost more stuff, including his ID.
Asked them if I could leave stuff. They said, yes, you can leave some stuff for 2 weeks. I said, I'll be back for it. I realized that I'd forgotten my ID, which was locked in the locker they provide. I called them first thing in the morning and tell them, look, my ID was in the locker. I forgot it. I have the key. I'll be down tomorrow to get it. But they can't find my ID, which shouldn't be hard to find. It's in a laptop bag.
We called the shelter to see if they could find the ID. They could not. Scott has not been back to a shelter since. Occasionally he's able to couch surf, but usually he sleeps outside. There is some good news. His legs are a little better, and he does not need his chair anymore. I wonder how many other people are sleeping on the street like Scott. Perhaps the latest homeless count will give us some answers.
That is one brave man, Scott, facing all of those hurdles and telling his story so publicly. We will keep you updated here on Access TV as to where and when he finds housing. Well, next up, we're going to hear from Hereditary Chief Bill Wilson. Imagine a government taking away all of the natural resources from some people that belong there. That's taking away their power. Let's hear what Chief Bill Wilson has to say about self-governance and the treaty process.
Welcome to Access TV. My name is Gunargie O'Sullivan, and I have the pleasure of sitting beside Hereditary Chief Bill Wilson, also known as Hemas. Today we're going to talk about They Called Me Number One. I've been gifted with this book, which we will read and we will bring to you, the audience of Access TV. Last segment we talked about the Treaty Commission and how things need to be reformed. This time around we're going to talk about hereditary chieftainship, and we're also going to discuss Aboriginal rights and title. Is that true?
Exactly. What we need to do is, as a basis of the other thing that happened to us here, and I would really appreciate that, and I appreciate my wife wrote this book.
Oh, yeah?
And she was a residential school survivor, and she went on to become a chief and become well, she found me and rescued me.
Yeah, she did, eh?
But what I think we should talk about is the relationship between ourselves and non-Indian people, which mostly has been based upon the assumption by non-Indian people that we're inferior, that they're superior. Mm. So they imposed upon us an elected system which was completely in defiance of our own system, which was the potlatch, which was the training of chiefs to become hereditary chiefs, to become leaders in our community. And that's what I am. I am an hereditary chief. My name is Hemas-Kla-Lee-Lee-Kla, not Bill Wilson. And I was gifted with that by my mother, who trained me from almost birth to become a hereditary chief. Mother's Day, too, by the way.
Yes,
congratulations.
Happy Mother's Day. Yeah, I have to.
So our people had a system of government long before the non-Indian people stumbled ashore. And our system worked for us for 40 or 50,000 years. But then, because they couldn't control us and they wanted access to our land, they imposed an elected system through the Department of Indian Affairs. Well, we're at a point now, thanks to the Chilcotin-Honeyquatine case, where even the federal court recognizes that you require the consent of the hereditary people, not the DIA elected people, but the hereditary people who have justifiable long history claim to the land. And that's basically where we are today. So we have to go back to 1763, King George VI, proclamation of 1763, all the way up to Calder, the St. Catharines Milling case, and then to the 1983 amendment of the Constitution, which guaranteed Aboriginal title and treaty rights in the Constitution, recognized by the Charter of Rights. So now we are today with the Honeyquatine case, which costs $50 million, in the highest court of the land, to recognize that Aboriginal people are required to consent, to be consulted and required to consent to any development on their territory. But it needs to be expressed through the historical hereditary relationship to the land by the people who were there, not the DIA elected chiefs. And that to me is a tremendous benefit. Yeah, now we are going to have the people like myself and other people who are educated in our relationship to the land, talking about our ownership, possession, and future in the land.
We've talked about how treaty trumps the government, but the hereditary chiefs trump the elected chiefs and their right to consult and consent over the land and rights?
Well, I don't say it's a question of a competition between or trumping either party. I mean, the reality is that Indians were uncontrollable according to the non-Indian people. Mm-hmm. They tried to force Christianity upon us. They tried to enforce the Department of Indian Affairs upon us. They tried to enforce the potlatch laws and the Sundance laws upon it, and it didn't work. And so they invented the elected system, which may very well be good for non-Indians, but our people had a system of training people to be chiefs. So if you grew up, as I did, but I'm not a great example, you were trained from birth, selected from birth, fed special foods, given special training, and then once you became eligible to be a chief, you were sent out into the wilderness to become one with nature. And then once you had that opportunity, you came back and now you were a chief. Yeah, you didn't have to get most of your family to vote for you. Yeah. You had to be trained. You had to have the opportunity.
Well, so the outlaw of the potlatches and the residential school were implemented as a way of
to destroy our people, to destroy our own
governing system.
Oh yeah,
our
clearly.
Own family system.
You see, John A. Macdonald, influenced by the churches, in the main, realized that Indians, weren't going to conform. So he and other people said that what we need to do is eliminate Indians. We need to eliminate their identity. So until they become just as we are, that we won't be able to dominate them, because guess what? we need their land, we need their resources. And that's what the policy has been. Like right from John A. MacDonald and Duncan Campbell Scott, who said that as soon as we can eliminate all the Indians, we won't have an Indian problem. Okay, so the policy still exists. That's the Department of Indian Affairs policy today, is that Indians don't have any right to make decisions for themselves. We, in our $28 billion bureaucracy, have the right to make decisions for you and me. And that's the way it is today. Well, I'm telling you, as a living, breathing example of a hereditary chief, they don't know what's good for us. And no one knows what's good for us except us.
Well, then, when our potlatch system was broken down, we lost our own way of keeping tabs of our own hierarchy system.
No, we didn't. No. See, our potlatch system was never broken down.
Okay.
They thought they broke us down.
Yeah.
They even bribed chiefs, weak chiefs, with money to try to undermine our people. My grandfather, Hemas-Kla-Lee-Lee-Kla, went to jail for 6 months in Ocala because he was practicing his potlatch.
Okay.
Now that's my name.
Yeah.
So they didn't break us down. They drove us underground, and we became stronger as a result of that. But the reality is that they imposed upon us, after they pushed us off the lands and the resources, a welfare system of distribution by the Department of Indian Affairs.
Okay.
Okay, so now they create band managers and elected chiefs who distribute the welfare. And as we talked last time, I mean, if I offered you 100 grand, who would you answer to?
I would answer to you.
Me,
Yes.
right? All right, so now we have a situation where people are forced off the land. People don't have their independence anymore. What are they going to do? Well, my position is, and it's always been, the hereditary chiefs and the hereditary system, our system of government, far more important than the Department of Indian Affairs. And more importantly, white assumptions about who or what we should be, to me, are meaningless, because I know who I am.
Yeah. But there are some hereditary chiefs that are out and about living in the urban environment and haven't reclaimed their position, their hereditary leadership.
You're talking to one.
How do we do this?
You're talking to one.
Yeah.
You're talking
but you're
to one.
going to be running for chief in your mother's territory.
60 years I've been living in the white man's wilderness, and I've been very successful.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's because of my good looks, but could be because of the fact I know people like you. But yeah, I'm going home now.
Yeah? Is that what we need to do as hereditary leaders? We need to step up to the plate, go back to our territory, reclaim our hereditary positions?
Not just as hereditary chiefs, because you're not a hereditary chief yet, and you never will be, but I mean, you're an Indian, right?
Yes, I am.
All right, so what we need, we got thousands of people living off Indian reserves, small little pockets of poverty upon which our people have been placed.
Yeah.
We need to bring them back. So I'm going back to Wallstam's. That's my mother's home reserve.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be the chief there. And we are going to create an environment that allows our university-trained people to come back, to create a reserve, to create an environment that we can make a living at. You don't have to live in Vancouver. You don't have to live in Nanaimo. You don't have to live in Victoria.
No.
You will come back to us. So if there are any marine biologists out there, I need 2 of them.
2 of them. Count them. 2.
And
2 marine biologists.
I need other people too.
Yeah.
So this reserve, which is now only populated by 50 people, will eventually become populated by 300 people. And they will all be working, we'll all be practicing our culture, and we'll all be speaking our language.
What's it going to take to bring back our hereditary leadership? We talk about money. A lot of our hereditary chiefs don't have financial backing. It's the elected chiefs that do. How do we bring the 2 together in a meaningful way?
Well, we can start by electing me, but
yeah.
No, I mean, we clearly have to make a decision about who or what we are responsive to.
Yeah.
I mean, do you believe that the white man knows what's best for you?
Personally?
I sincerely doubt that you do. I don't believe that. I never have believed that.
Yeah.
I mean, I graduated the highest marks in my high school, and I went to university, and I achieved everything in the white man system. And I got to tell you something. As much as I like non-Indian people, I've never met one, including the Prime Minister of this country, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, who was the most brilliant Prime Minister we ever had, that was as good as I was. That's the attitude we need to have. Let's stop pretending.
Yes. We are the best. Don't forget to pick up this book. They Called Me #1, written by Bev Sellers. And thank you to Bill Wilson for joining me today. We'll talk to you on our next segment of Access TV.
I hope so. I hope you bring us out, Bev.
Gaila Kasla.
Next up, we're going to hear a report from Sylvaine Zimmerman, who lives on Bowen Island, and tells us about the new co-housing project that's looking like a success.
I've noticed that islanders tend to be a romantic, self-reliant lot. People who left the mainland behind with a sense of adventure, as well as many creative souls and people seeking tranquility and nature. Here you will also find economic refugees, those who are forced to find work in the big city, but who can't afford to live there due to the increasingly unaffordable housing market. Whether we are rugged individualists or a social butterfly fleeing metropolitan alienation, the glue that binds us, what keeps us here, despite the commuting and inconvenience of ferry schedules, is our sense of community. Recently, Bowen Island became the place to be for those who are specifically looking for that sense of belonging from the get-go, by seeking to become members of an intentional community, the Belterra co-housing development. It is a place whose members profess an interest in social responsibility, ecological stewardship, and mutual support.
That will be, the greenhouse will be put on top of our woodworking shop, because a lot of our members have woodworking tools and hobbies and experience, so they want to come and bring those talents and do the finishing work on the interior of the common house.
It includes common areas including workshops, gardening space, visitor facilities, and an industrial kitchen and dining hall for special occasions.
It's got a big, almost commercial type kitchen. It has a great big, would be like a living room that would sometimes be a dining room. It has a lounge area with a fireplace, probably where there'll be a big television in there for, you know, getting together and watching movies or World Series or something like that. And there's a kids playroom, and there's a big common use room that's going to be for hobbies and things like that. There's a couple of guest bedrooms with bathrooms in them. And it's just going to be, I think it'll be a really well-used building. It'll be like the center of the community.
It is a residential concept where around 20% of the units are permanently dedicated to be non-market, affordable housing.
There will be turnover in the future, of course. If somebody moves,
what does non-market mean?
It's affordable housing. It's set at a lower rate because they can't, they don't appreciate with the market, or the buyer doesn't get the appreciation. It might sell at a higher rate, but they don't. That's what they get in exchange. It maintains it as low-cost housing, even if the rates go up around them.
Just saying, it's in the hands of the municipality whether or not that continues. You know, as people develop property over here. They just have to be able to have a certain percentage of that property which is going to become non-market housing, or do something else that has the same effect. You know, either provide land or provide money for.
Well, we did both, right? We dedicated some land, parkland as well, for this development. So both those kinds of things, are good to be required of developers.
Comment. Yeah. If every development had 5 what are they called again?
Non-market
units, it would be quite great for people who would never get into the market.
Yeah.
And the entire complex is built to an environmental gold standard.
You can hear an excavator out there right now.
Right.
Right? You hear it going,
yeah.
And then you shut it.
It's pretty well gone. Yeah. Each building has its own air source heat pump, and and it heats. It's basically hot water that's being heated and then pumped throughout the building, and that's shared by, the cost of that is shared by everybody in the building depending on the square footage of their home.
So Tess, tell me, what's it like living in your new apartment compared to the old one, for example?
Well, I love it. I absolutely love it. It's not a particularly large place. I have a 500 square foot studio unit. But it's mine, and it's new, and it's shiny, and I love the people around it. So.
It's fantastic. What made you decide to get interested in co-housing as a choice?
When I first got involved, it was specifically because this was going to be the first project on Bowen Island that fell under Bowen Island Municipality's affordable housing waitlist policy. So this was the first development that was going to have affordable housing for sale, and that was my initial reason for getting involved. And I did actually, when finances changed, I did try to leave the group twice actually, and the community made sure that I stayed in.
Thanks to consensus decision-making practices on design, procurement, and building questions, economies of scale come into play. This affects every co-owner and makes the entire development more cost-effective for everyone. You had certain sort of expectations or worries about the comparative financial weight of different members of this co-housing community and how that would impact your decision-making ability.
When I first joined, we did discuss how everybody in the development does have a voice, and everybody is heard equally. And when I first started, I didn't truly believe that was going to be the case. When we got down to it, I really did feel that the people that had more money would be the decision makers, but that's not the case at all. It is very much a group where everybody's voice is heard, everybody's voice is respected, and everybody's needs are met if it's appropriate to the group. So it worked out really well. I had one point when they were the architect and the project manager felt that the size of the unit that I wanted was too small, and that was the size of the unit that I could afford. They wanted to make that unit larger, which of course would increase the cost, and I said that I would not be able to stay in that way, and so they made those units. They made them 500 square feet. And they only made 2 of them, but they made them, and I was able to stay.
Well, most people, except for the Bowen Islanders, most people who came here from either from Vancouver or from other places, were looking for co-housing specifically.
They're an amazing group of people. I've been involved since 2009, and so people have come in at various times throughout that time, and you get to know people. We have meetings once a month making decisions on either how the buildings were going to look or how we were going to live together, how we're going to do our business. So I've been going to meetings once a month with these people for a long time. You already have a relationship with them. You know how to work out problems. It's a really great group.
Thanks very much. Anything else you want to add about your whole experience so far?
It's just an amazing community, and the community glue is phenomenal. I love this style of living where community is the most important thing, really.
Thank you so much, Tess.
You're very welcome.
The 5th Annual Britannia School Garden Fundraiser, Saturday evening, May 23rd, 2015. Doors open at 6 p.m. Astorinos, 1739 Venables. Dinner prepared by the Britannia Culinary Arts students at 7 p.m. Music, storytelling, silent auction, bar, and kind spirits. Help support youths in learning to grow their own food. Tickets available at Britannia Community Center. With no end in sight to the sky-high home prices and rentals in Vancouver, rally for a place to call home. Add your voice. Join the Vancouverites for affordable housing and Generation Squeeze at Affordable Housing Rally, noon to 2 p.m., Sunday, May 24th, at the Vancouver Art Gallery, 750 Hornby Street. Is your rent too damn high? Book launch of Unsettling Canada, a national wake-up call, with the authors Arthur Manuel and Grand Chief Ronald M. Derrickson. Unsettling Canada chronicles the modern struggle for Indigenous rights of the past 50 years over a wide range of historical, national, and recent international breakthroughs. 6:30 to 8 p.m., Tuesday, May 26th. Vancouver Public Library central location, unceded Coast Salish territories.
Coming up next month, you have an event.
May is Asian Heritage Month, so I'm hosting an event at the Grunt Gallery like we used to. It's called Mirch Masala Mayfill, which will feature South Asian writers and performers.
That's very good. And you're also covering these things on Vancouver Co-op Radio.
40th anniversary. What a party that was.
That was quite a party, and we're leaving you with footage from the Vancouver Co-op Radio anniversary with all of its amazing diversity. And we invite you to tell us your story here on Access Television. We're accessible and ready to tell the truth.